Hi guys, thanks for joining me once again for another video. I'm here with Peter from Thai Legal Protection right here in downtown Bangkok. We're on Wireless Road in Peter's office. So we've done a series of videos on do's and don'ts here in Bangkok or in Thailand. And today we're going to talk about people who risk being deported because they're staying on tourist visas or they're trying to stay here long term on tourist visa. Peter, thanks for agreeing to do another video. So what's your take on what's been going on lately with guys who are trying to stay here on tourist visas?
Okay. Well, some of these guys stay here long term as a tourist. They normally come on visa exemption because it's easy. So they're from a Western country. And after a few times of entering, the officer will start to question. And we don't know when they're going to get questioned. Sometimes it could be after the second time, the third time, the fifth time. So we just want to be able to prepare the guys to understand, how to deal with that type of situation, or maybe how to eliminate it if possible.
So can we just explain what these guys are trying to do? Because I know in the old days, people used to stay here for years on tourist visas. They're getting a bus, go over the Cambodian border and come back. And people still try to do that, but they're really taking a big risk, aren't they?
Sure. Yeah, so by land, the rule is still two.
Two times and then
two times per year by land, okay?
So I know a number of years ago, there was a lot of people who used to, they'd stay here for a long time, up to sometimes years on a tourist visa, and you could get away with it 20, 30 years ago. You get in a minibus, go over the Cambodian border, and you just did that every month. But why can't you do that any longer?
Yeah, so what they've done is they've put a limit of 2 times per calendar year to do a land border run, okay? And then, it used to be unlimited by air, but we're getting reports that it's now 2 times per year by air as well. Oh, okay. And, I've done some phone calls to try to confirm that. So, we have basically the Thai embassies, saying that it's 2 times per calendar year on, by air as well. All right. And then we've got immigration in Bangkok saying that it's unlimited still. Then we have Ministry of Foreign Affairs saying that it's 2 times per calendar year now. And so, it's really confusing. So I just want the guys to maybe have some idea of how to deal with the situation if it comes up when they arrive at the airport. And maybe they've been here 3 or 4 times already this year on visa exemption, and the officer starts, asking them questions and how can they deal with that and what are their options.
Sure. I watched a TikTok video yesterday where this actually happened to a guy. He didn't get refused entry, but they called the person who looked at his passport called his supervisor. They took him in a back office and they said, "You like staying in Thailand a long time?" And he was like, "Yeah." And they were like, "Well, you're going to have to get a different visa because you can't do this." But he was lucky they let him in.
Yeah, that happens quite frequently. And sometimes we don't know why it happens. The officer could be looking at your history of entering Thailand. He could just not like the way you look that day. He could be in a bad mood that day. There's no way that we can gauge when it's going to happen to you and if it's going to happen.
Because it is at their discretion at the end of the day.
Everything is at the officer's discretion, and that's the way we want to look at it, because there have been guys, I know guys that have been successful entering 6, 7 times in 1 year on visa exemption, and then I know other guys that have been questioned after the second time, and there's no way to know that. So immigration, they have their guidelines they have to follow, but like you said, at the end of the day, it's based on their discretion. So there's certain things that the guys can do to prepare if they're going to be asked those questions, you know what I mean? So
what would you suggest, especially if somebody was under 50, because I know once you hit that magic number, you can get the retirement visa. It's fairly easy to get these days. You got to jump through a few hoops, but it's pretty easy. So what about guys who come out here who are under 50 and they want to stay here, but they don't want to be looking over their shoulder. They want to stay here legitimately. What would you suggest to those kind of guys?
Well, the most common solution for them is studying Thai or studying Muay Thai boxing.
What's it called?
The ED visa. It's an education visa.
Right. And how long does that visa last for?
Usually you can do it for about a year, but sometimes on certain schools you can get a couple of years out of it, but most of the time it's a year.
Because I do know that immigration have also been tightening up on this, because some people were abusing these visas, and immigration, as I say, have tightened up. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, so immigration will tighten up because there's some schools that are maybe issuing these visas and they really shouldn't be. But one of the things that you need to be aware of when you're on an ED visa is it's not the situation where you can just get a re-entry permit and attach it to that permission to stay based on studying, right? And then start leaving the country multiple times. The officer at the airport's not stupid. So he's going to say, well, if you're studying, how come you're traveling in and out of Thailand so frequently, right? They'll probably refuse entry to you, right? And then there's other scenarios where maybe you've decided to study with a school that's not so much on the up and up, right? And so if you don't leave, probably nothing's going to happen and you're going to be okay.
Right.
But if you leave the country and then try to come back, that school might be on the radar of the immigration officer at the airport, and they might say, hey, I heard this school maybe is not quite on the up and up. What's going on? Are you studying? Let's hear you talk. Let's hear you speak Thai. Blah blah blah. This has happened many times, right? So we just have to be very careful when we choose the right permission to stay for us. The right visa, that we make sure that we understand how to manage it properly. Because if you don't manage it properly, you might be in a situation where you're refused entry. But I think right now the biggest trend we're seeing is guys who are actually not wanting to pull the trigger on a retirement visa if they're over 50, or not wanting to pull the trigger on a long-term visa.
Why do you think that is?
It's just too difficult for them. They don't want to commit. Yeah, so, it's been always easy for them just to jump on a plane whenever they want to come to Thailand, see their girlfriend or whatever they want to come and do here, right? It was just always easy, right? But now when it's not easy, when we don't make things easy for them anymore, then they just get frustrated. And I think you've seen that, when you see comments in social media, right? Guys will say, well, I'm not going to come to Thailand if they make it so difficult for me, right? Do they always say that? But then they usually come back anyways, right? So yeah, but we just want to, I would like to maybe give you some tips, or some of the guys' tips on basically what they can do to prepare themselves if they are going to use being a tourist as the way to stay here long term. I think that's the key. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, so just to reiterate, so everybody's clear on this, the actual rules are no more than 2 times on a tourist visa in 1 year, regardless whether you fly or come by land.
It's visa exemption.
Right.
Yeah. And so what that means is you don't come with a visa. They just stamp your passport at the airport.
30 days
yeah,
normally.
And 30 days. And like I said, there's a little bit of inconsistency in this rule, because we have the embassies and people thought that they're just making typos on their website, but actually our staff here contacted the Thai embassies that were posting these rules on their websites and confirmed with them in writing that they were told 2 times per calendar year on visa exemption by air as well as by land or sea. But immigration inside Thailand is singing a different tune. So what we just want to make sure is that the guys know that when you come here as a tourist, if that's the way you're going to enter Thailand every time, whether it's on a tourist visa or on visa exemption, you have to be prepared to prove you're a legitimate tourist.
Sure.
And I can maybe give the guys some help with how to do that.
Right. If you haven't watched any of our videos before, Peter and I have done a series of videos now. Why don't you just tell people who haven't watched our videos before what it is you do in your company?
Okay. So Thai Legal Protection is like it's not really a law firm. It's a membership service that provides a legal service. And the guys can call in at any time, as many times as they want, as long as their membership is active, to get legal advice. And part of that legal advice includes reviewing contracts before you sign, resolving a dispute before you sign, making you a will, a last will or a living will, providing emergency service 24 hours a day.
Okay. I mean, is it when you say a membership, are they committed to any sort of time frame, or what sort of price is that?
Yeah, so it's 795 Thai baht per month, and there's no term commitment. So most of the tourists will come, they'll have the membership, then when they leave, they'll pause it, and then when they come back, they'll reactivate it. Most of the expats just keep it because they're here full time.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, exactly.
So what about if somebody comes here and they joined your membership and they wanted help with visas and things like that? Is that something you could assist them with?
Sure. So what we do is there's kind of 2 aspects to this. The first aspect is we'll look at your situation and say this is the best visa for you. Number 2, we'll walk you through the process, the paperwork, the fees, and actually prepare you to do the whole thing by yourself, which means you don't need to pay an agent to do it.
But if somebody does want to use an agent, just to make it easy, you've got contacts.
Well, there's a couple of reasons why people want to use agencies. The first one is that they don't 100% qualified and the agent can help with that. Or number two, they just don't want to be bothered. Yeah. So, so we can basically facilitate visas as well. We have a satellite office in Pattaya that does a lot of our visa work there, and then we do our visa work out of this office as well too, in Bangkok, right?
Right, so what I'll do, guys, I'll put a link in the description below. So if you're interested in having a look at Peter's website, I say Peter's website, it's quite a large company. I'm in their office in Wireless Road here. As I said at the beginning, it's quite a large office. There's a number of staff here, so it's a professional organisation. But I will put a link in the description, and if you want to have a look at the website, then just click the link in the description, and that will tell you all about the firm. Because I do know you've helped people who've maybe been locked up in Lumpini police station at 3 o'clock in the morning, and you've got a 24-hour hotline, haven't you, that people can...
Yeah, it happens more in Pattaya than it does in Bangkok.
Yeah, sure.
Unfortunately, but yeah, so we can help with pretty much anything, as well as, some of the guys might not know this, but if you're planning on getting married here and you want to bring your spouse back to your home country, or you want to get married in your home country instead of getting married here, we also deal with that too. Yeah, because
I did a video a while back with David, your colleague here, and he said it's getting really difficult to take people back, visitors to the USA, but England's a bit easier now. And do you think this thing's going to happen where Lord Cameron came here and they said that they're going to allow Thai people into the UK without having to apply for a visa? Do you think that's going to go ahead?
Well, I'm going to say that if it does go ahead, there's a lot of challenges behind that.
Right.
Just like when, for example, right now, South Korea and Japan have a bit of a problem where Thai people will go over there and work, but they'll be a tourist, right? So what every country is concerned with, including Thailand, is people coming here and overstaying their visa or working without the proper permission. So I would hope that happens, but I just think it's easier said than done. That you have to make sure that things are set up properly. So that's the main thing. But that would be really good because as we all know, a lot of the people, Thailand is a popular place for guys from the UK to come, and so just because of that, a lot of the guys get married to Thai people.
Or they have a girlfriend, they just want to take her back for a couple of weeks
like that,
to see if it's going to...
Yeah, so they have to entertain something like this because there's a lot of back and forth between both countries, Yeah.
And I mean, just to prove that immigration are really getting tight now, you've heard these stories of what's going on in Phuket. There's a lot of, we won't name the countries, but a lot of influx of people down there, and they've set up these businesses using Thais as a front, but basically they're foreign businesses, and they're there on tourist visas, and they're not allowed to do that.
Yeah, I'll just go through a few of the things that are happening, okay? So going back to the first thing that we were talking about, entering Thailand on a visa exemption, or even as a tourist, if you've done it a bunch of times with even an NTV or an STV tourist visa, if you come a lot of times on these as a tourist in general, you're going to be scrutinized at some point if you keep doing it. We don't know at what time, whether it's after 6 times, after 3 times, or maybe this year you come 10 times and next year after 2 times they start scrutinizing you. We have no idea. So what you can do to prepare yourself is have a valid reason to tell the officer why you're coming as a tourist so often. Like maybe you have a girlfriend or a fiance here, okay? Second thing is be able to show proof that you're a legitimate tourist, which means you're going to have a return or onward flight, and you're going to have proof of travel funds, which is 20,000 baht or 40,000 per family. And then the last thing is that you've got proof of accommodation. So that's very important that you show. Now, one thing that immigration has started to do that they never did before, and we've had this happen to 4 of our members. A lot of the guys will use one of those booking websites. So they don't pay the full fare, they just pay a booking fee to reserve their onward ticket or return flight back to their home country. But those reservations cannot be verified on the airline's website. So what happens is immigration has started to try to verify those bookings. They'll say, just wait a second. And they'll go back to the computer and they'll go on that airline's website. And if they can't put that booking number in and have it show up, boom. Either they'll refuse you entry or they'll ask you to book another flight. And if you don't have the facility to do that because maybe your phone has got no internet. Right. So that's the first thing that you got to do and you got to be careful of. Second thing is that if you're opening up a company, make sure that you be careful about the Thai nominee shareholder, right? Because what happens is people in Phuket, Pattaya, that Hua Hin, the touristy areas, they buy they open up companies because they want to buy property. Right. And they can't buy property as a foreigner. They can buy condo, but they can't buy a house and property, right? So what they do is they open up a company, they put a nominee Thai shareholder on there, and the government obviously knows about this. And so what they've done is there's often crackdowns on that. So what that means is they'll go check the company out, they'll go check out the law firm that registered that company. And there's been plenty of instances where the law firms have been closed down because they've done like a whole bunch of these nominee companies, right? So that's another issue that is happening, right? And just, back to the old way before, now that tourism's back again, there's a lot of people working illegally. So foreigners are coming to Thailand and, they're either working without the proper visa, without the work permit, or their visa doesn't match. So let's say they got an ED visa, but they're actually working in a company, right? Or they got a volunteer visa, but they're not a volunteer in an NGO or a foundation. They're working in another company, right? So the government is now focusing on these things because tourism is back, and I remember a video that Integrity Legal did a few days ago. And he did a really good video about how Thailand's frame of mind towards foreigners is starting to change. And he does a good video about how the climate kind of has changed here for foreigners.
Well, even I've noticed that because I've been coming here a lot of years.
There's a lot of talk about foreigners coming here behaving badly, and the government is getting a lot of pressure from the citizens to do something about it. Right?
And I know there's about 100 people being deported from Phuket. I mean, you watch the news, obviously. Yeah. And what they're doing, they're opening companies and servicing their people from their own country, which is great because they all speak the same language, but they're putting they're taking business away from the Thais, and obviously the Thais are then reporting it to immigration and they follow up on it.
Well, that was one of the things, these people are opening up tour companies and they're not really supposed to do it, right? No. So, that's all great for tourism and all, but if they don't do it properly, in a proper Thai company with a proper shareholder structure and everything, then it's not good, right? And so that's just, all the things that the authorities are cracking down on right now. And I'm obviously not a lawyer, but I have a team of lawyers that help all of our members deal with all of these kinds of things.
And I'm a member as well, by the way.
Yeah. So so the guys can call in and get advice before they make a decision on renting a condo, buying a condo. If they've gotten themselves in some kind of hot water, they can get advice on that. And we try to do as much as we can under the membership. Sometimes we'll do a little bit extra, but if that can't be done, then there is going to be a charge, but our members get a discount of up to 25% off of legal fees. Okay,
that's good. And as I say, there'll be a link in the description. So to end the video, I think what we agree on is don't try to stay here long term on visa exempt tourist visa, because you are taking a big risk. And once you're deported, you go on a blacklist, don't you?
Yeah, well, if you get caught, no, it's a little bit different, okay? So being refused entry is not like being deported or be on a blacklist. Right. So when you get refused entry, and by the way, it can be appealed, but nobody wants to go through that hassle to appeal being refused entry unless you have a real serious reason why you need to be here, right? But generally, right, being refused entry will just put your name in the system as a record, which means that you might get scrutinized whenever you come here again. When you come back, they're going to look at you more closely. Where, let's say you're on overstay, right? Okay, and you get caught. So in other words, there's a difference, right? So let's say you're on 5 days overstay, and you just make it to the airport, you fly out, okay, no problem. You pay 500 baht per day, no blacklist. But let's say you're on 5 days overstay, and on the way to the airport, there's a road checkpoint, right? Say it's 1 a.m, you're on your way to the airport, they stop the taxi, or they stop your car that you're in, and hey, can we just take a look at your passport? If that happens and they notice, or let's say you're in a nightclub and they do a check, in Pattaya, this happens all the time. they check your passport sometimes when they come in and make sure there's no drugs being used in the club.
I've actually been stopped in a taxi and
really?
searched at like 1 o'clock in the morning.
Really?
A couple of years ago, but it has happened. Yeah, and obviously nothing happened.
But if you know if that happens to you and you're on even a 1-day overstay, that's it. You're still going to be arrested. You're still going to be put through the court system, and then you're going to be blacklisted and deported.
So just to be clear, so even if you're just 1 day over, and they do a check in a nightclub and they see you're 1 day over, they will actually arrest you and take you to jail and put you through the court system.
They just look at it as simply as you broke the law and you're on overstay. So that's why we always get these questions, okay? Me and my partner Mark at One Stop Visa, we get these questions all the time. Oh, the extension's 1,900 baht. I'm only staying for 5 more days. Do I really have to do it? I don't want to go waste money. I don't want to go to immigration and waste my day, blah, blah, blah. But you know what? It's 1,900 baht. Just go get the extension, have peace of mind. You know, maybe nine times out of 10, probably nothing would have happened to you. But just that one time that something can happen, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Well, I was going to say, for me, it's just unbelievable that people will take a risk for the sake of 1,900 baht and an afternoon. It doesn't take all day.
Well, you know why? Because in the past, these overstay rules weren't so strict. And now they brought out those blacklist laws a few years ago, right? So you're automatically 5 years.
What's the time frame? Sorry to interrupt you, but what's the time frame on the blacklist? Like you're not allowed back into the country for a year, 2 years.
I'll give you an example. Okay. So if you leave on overstay and you're past 90 days, okay. So let's say you're 4 months overstay and you just leave. Okay, so that I believe is a 1 year blacklist.
You can't come back for 1 year.
Yeah. But let's say you're arrested. And I believe the minimum's 5 years.
Wow.
If you're within that same time frame, right? So just like you said before, the guys are used to what it used to be like here, and so they just think that nothing's changed, even though they've got these rules. They think that the Thai government's not serious about these things, and sometimes it may appear that way, but actually it's not.
No.
Especially now.
I can remember when you could overstay, and it really wasn't a problem because when you went to the airport, it was 500 baht a day. So if in that scenario that you said, I've only got 5 days, instead of going to immigration, you think, well, it's going to be 2,500 baht. I'll just pay it at the airport.
Yeah, and that's okay to do it. But the problem is if you get caught on the way there. And some guys will say, I've done it 7 times and I've never been caught. And then I know the guy that's only done it once and got caught, right? So you can't, it's just like saying like, well, I've traveled here 10 times in a year on visa exemption and I've never ever been asked to prove anything. They've let me in, I'm 55. I don't want to get a retirement visa. So they're just like, I'm just going to keep doing this because they never had a problem. But eventually, at some point in the future, they will start to be questioned. And so I just want to give them what they need to do to prepare for that. Sure. And then, the Thai government is getting serious about this, and they would just prefer that, if you're a retiree over 50 and you want to come here 6 or 7 times a year, they really would like you to be on a retirement visa. You don't have to be here the full 12 months to be on a retirement visa. And if you're under 50, that's the most difficult thing. So, if you're here studying Thai really, or studying Muay Thai really, or you're under 50 and you want to marry a Thai girl, so you're here in that capacity, then you've got the proper visa.
So if somebody's watching this video and they think, hey, that's a good idea, I do actually want to learn Thai, I'm not going to just use it as an excuse to stay in Thailand, but I want to learn Thai. Is there a minimum time frame, like say they get a 1 year visa to learn Thai, is there so many hours they have to do a week or a month?
Well, I don't remember exactly what it is, I'm sorry, but so normally for a 1 year studying of Thai language, right, so you have a year visa, but every 3 months they generally ask you to go back to immigration and do the extension and maybe do a little test. Right, that's generally what it is, right? And sometimes you can go to an agency and you can kind of have the more flexible situation given to you or offered to you. But at the end of the day, when you have that situation, you have to be careful because, like I said, guys on ED visas will think that they can just travel in and out of the country during that year, and they just can't. The officer's going to catch on. You're supposed to be studying in school. How come you're traveling in and out of the country? So you just got to be wary of those things. So what we can do and what anybody can do, if it doesn't have to be Thai legal protection, it could be any agent. You can sit down with them and they can give you an option to choose, and you can decide if that's what you want to do or not.
And it's really important to let people know that if you're on say a retirement visa, you have to get a multiple entry visa if you want to go out and come back again. You want to go home once a year or whatever, because they will cancel the...
Yeah, so you get your initial retirement visa, right? And then you get what's called an extension of stay based on retirement, right? So you have your non-O based on retirement, or your non-OA, which is a little bit different. So let's just talk about the non-O based on retirement. Once you get your extension of stay, if you leave the country, that'll get voided. So you need to make sure you get a re-entry permit, and they're available in single entry or multiple entry.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's all good information. I hope people picked up some tips from this video. And once again, to reiterate, there will be a link in the description so you can contact Peter directly through the website. Peter, thanks for joining me again today.
No problem. Nice to see you again.
Always great to meet up with you.
Great.
And I'm sure we'll be doing another video in the future.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, that's it for today. Thanks again for watching this video. I hope you got some tips from Peter here, and I'll catch up with you all real soon. Thanks again.